Hope everybody's having a great Saturday. Another Wall Street Journal, great paper today. It's always a big paper. Saturday is a real challenge for me to try to figure out what to pull out. I've always got way too much material, and I think you ought to hear all of it, and that's not the way it should work. But by the way, I wanted to share a letter to the editor. Every once in a while I'll do this. This is from a Gavin Murdoch in Amsterdam, New York. And he says, today students aren't taught much stuff. Teachers try to teach them to think, critique, and analyze without knowing stuff, but they have nothing to draw from and examine. Opinions and ideas are formed without rudimentary knowledge of stuff. They argue from passion, not knowledge. Stuff is important. It is necessary to bind us as a nation and as a people. Without stuff, we fall apart. I thought it was a great letter. I think it's a lot of what I see in Facebook is you see people arguing from passion, like he says. They argue from passion and not knowledge, and they should fall back on knowledge sometimes. Good article on the shrinking General Motors. Mary Barra is the chief executive officer there, and 10 years ago, GM was the largest company in the world, largest auto company in the world. Now it's third. If the Fiat merger goes through, they'll be fourth behind Toyota and VW, and obviously the Fiat combined company. So she's done a lot. You compare 2013 to 2019. 2013, GM had 34% of its sales outside of US and China. Now only 16%. Where the cars and parts were made, 2013, 25 countries. 2019, 9 countries. And employees, over 200,000 in 2013, less than 164,000 now. And number of dealers went down from 20,000 to 12,000 dealers. Huge drop in dealerships there. So observation, sometimes bigger is not better. And I think in this case, Mary Barra may be exactly right. She's doing the right thing. Totally pulled out, like India, totally pulled out. India, Thailand, Australia was a huge deal. With Holden, that's a great brand that GM's had there for 80-something years, and gone. Totally out of Australia. They said, it's it. We can't make money. And in the long term, they looked at it and said, can't make money. They're leaving. So second article, quick article on Biden's 401k plan. The current 401k plan really gives higher benefit to higher income people because it's based on the tax bracket you're in, and it's deferred tax. So the higher tax bracket you're in, the more you save. So somebody that's making $410,000 a year could have a $9,100 tax break in deferred taxes, and but those, a poor person setting aside $10,000 would only have a $1,000 tax break because they're at the 10-11% bracket down there at the low end. So Biden is looking at changing that out and saying we'll have across the board 26% federal tax credit, and say we'll make this more fair. So there's no question the current system is unfair if that's how you judge it. The real question is, will it change behavior at the low end? And that's what he believes, that he'll get more people at the low end to get in. I question that. Right now, those people that make over $150,000 a year, that have a 401k plan, 94% contribute. I can't imagine who the 6% are that don't contribute, especially when it's free and matching. It's amazing to me. But those under 15,000 a year, only 31% participate in a 401k plan, even though it's free money, right? I mean, you can argue that all day long and try to convince somebody, but they don't contribute. They need every dollar they can, and they just don't see the benefit. So we'll see. Interesting. Trying to share different articles about different Biden plans and Trump plans they're being developed. So early voting started, by the way, Friday. in Virginia, Minnesota, South Dakota, and Wyoming, 1.5 months early. So what's the reason for it being so early? I'm not sure I understand it. It'd be great if some of my listeners could chime in there. And then, of course, you got to say, well, wait a minute, the debates haven't been held yet. Shouldn't they wait and hear the debates? Well, then you got to ask yourself, is there a certain segment of population that is going to vote today, just like they're going to vote 2 months from now, just like they're going to vote 4 years from now? And I think that's true. Their mind is made up, and they're going to go ahead and vote just like they would. The debates or any explosion bomb of new news on Biden or Trump, let's say one of them gets sick, when something happens, who knows? But will it change anything? And I think probably in 80% of the voters, it wouldn't change anything. So maybe it's let the early votes happen and give them more time to process the ballots. A little trivia article that I thought was interesting. What's the worst month for traffic deaths? September. It's actually, September has about 12 deaths per billion miles in the U.S., by the way. This is U.S. based. March is the best at about 10% less, 20% less at 10 deaths per billion miles. So September's, by the way, they look back through 2009 all the way through 2018. This is consistent every year. Every single year, the chart looks almost the same about what months have higher traffic deaths. It's not in the wintertime when there's snow and ice on the ground. I guess people slow down. They're much safer then, and it actually it results in safer driving. Worst times to drive, 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. every day. Worst day of the week, Saturday. Worst day of the year, New Year's Day. I've often, I always tell my wife, I'm very nervous that day. We go out to a party, and in fact, I want to get out of there before midnight and get back home. I am very nervous that day because I understand the statistic. Data means something, and you really ought to understand statistics in your life to cut your risk down. But New Year's, by the way, July 4th is right up there close, and Labor Day right behind it. So why September? I bet you're waiting to hear what the reason for, right? No one knows. This is, again, like a lot of things, and you'll hear a lot of people submit something, and it sounds reasonable, but it's probably more complex than what we give it credit for. Some people think it's because that time of the year that it's getting darker more of the day, and younger drivers and older drivers, because of eyesight, have trouble driving, and that causes more accidents. It's the end of summer. We're getting faster in our driving, and Labor Day, by the way, is included in that September, and Labor Day is a high day for with all the parties and, I suppose, alcoholic content and stuff, and lots of people driving, right? Lots of people making their last summer trips before school starts. So nobody knows the reason, and I'm okay with that sometimes. I like listening to people that say, we looked at this and we just can't understand it. That, what I don't like is somebody that has to force fit a reason in there and tell you they understand it. It needs more study. A quick thing on Ginsburg. My observation, and I wish the president would have taken the high road and been the first person out there to say, look, let's bury her first. Let's think about her and the service she's had to her country, and get her buried. And then when we bury her, let's start the political storms. But you heard the political storms come up immediately, and everybody says, well, this isn't political. Of course it's political. Supreme Court is very political. If you haven't watched any of the last confirmation hearings, 5 or 6 of them, then you don't understand that this is all about politics. And by the way, ignore all the rules that everybody are telling you that should be in play, right? This is too close to the next election. You next let the next Senate, next president, this is the rule that we have. This is not a rule. The president gets to decide until early January. By the way, it goes that long. By the way, it's even after election, and so don't think all these rules should be applied. And then you got to ask yourself, and probably the question, if you're on Trump's side, ask the question over to, if Hillary would have won in 2016, would she be putting a replacement in for Ginsburg, which her husband put in, by the way, or would she wait till the next election? I think we all know the answer to that. I don't know that makes up my mind for me, but the fact of the matter is the president gets to do it. I think he's going to put a woman in there and going to make it very, very difficult for a certain Susan Collins and other Republican senators, women senators especially, and make it difficult for the confirmation hearing. Enough about Ginsburg. I think probably you're getting tired of it already. Portland police is strained. Ever since these riots have started, the homicides are up dramatically. Over time, May through August, $6.8 million. They banned tear gas. The policemen can't use tear gas. And the prosecutors are releasing the people that the police arrest right away. So they're going right back on the streets. Budget cut, 84 position. They eliminated 36 officers, which were tied to reducing gun violence. And of course, that's went up since. Do we know it's directly correlated? Of course not. And by the way, another observation that I thought was interesting, the nearby cities aren't helping. And this is common in police force and fire departments, that nearby cities will come over and help. Liability is too high, and too many reputations are on the line. The nearby city goes over there, something happens, they get in the news, and here they're dragged into the mud along with Portland. So they're not getting any help from anybody. And of course, the people in charge don't want the federal government to come in. So my question is, what's the exit plan for the Portland mayor? Do they just let this keep going on and morale and the police force get tore apart? What's the exit plan? How are they going to get out of this? Last one today that I really had fun with is I've labeled it Princeton Confesses, Princeton University, one of the Ivy League universities, right? Can't do anything wrong. Very politically correct. So the president, Eisgruber, sent a letter out, and he said that the university is working on combating systemic racism including, it had the phrase there, in its policies, okay? And sent this letter out to all the students and the staff, and it had it as a press release. So this is one of those things that's real popular. In fact, you'll hear the word systemic racism, which is a term I hate. I'm not sure I even understand it, and I think I read pretty well. But they've thrown this term out, systemic racism. We have systemic racism in our university and on our policies, and they've been left over from years past. So somebody, and I think this is a brilliant move. Sometimes I've always thought and told people, instead of arguing somebody's position, my point is I want to argue, do you really have systemic racism? Do you understand what systemic racism? Sometimes the best argument, the best debate tactic is to say, I agree with you. Now wait a minute. Because here's the problem that's happening. Princeton has been telling all the students and the government that it doesn't discriminate. It's on the website. It's in all the paper. We don't discriminate, right? Remember, this is Title IV stuff, Civil Rights Act. This is real serious, right? In fact, they've had $75 million since this president has been in place of federal government funding because they don't discriminate. They wouldn't get it if they discriminated. So Was the president lying? Is the university lying? Are they discriminating or are they not discriminating? Do they have systemic racism or not? You can't have it both ways. And so this is where it's easy to say, but can you defend it? And now they've placed Princeton in a very difficult place, because my gut feel is this president, when he used this term, he used it like everybody else is using it, without thinking about it and about thinking about which policies currently are a part of systemic racism at the university. So now they're in a tough spot. Will they say they were lying? They really didn't mean that. They were just politically correct and saying the same thing everybody else is doing. So, or will they have to admit areas? Now, if they admit areas, they accepted money based on no systemic racism. So, and by the way, if they deny that they had racism, watch the students go up in arms, because students believe these universities have been systemic racist for much time. By the way, this is a common thing with this administration of Trump. They've taken the Ivy League schools, and Harvard and Yale have already been taking a court on the Asian discrimination for Asian admitting into the university, because they've had to admit that the Asians would get much higher student acceptance rates based on all their other items in their resume and their application, except for the fact they're Asian, and they're discriminated because of that. So that's still in court. That's being fought. It's an interesting fight. But I thought this was interesting with Princeton. Be careful what you confess. There may be somebody out there that says, okay, now you have to repent and you have to change from your ways, right? This is the method that we must do when we repent and admit we're racist. So I thought this was an interesting. Maybe we'll stop a lot of this people throwing this systemic racism term out when they're not even sure what it means. By the way, if you want an exercise, take today's culture and work on defining systemic racism, and then look for items that you believe are really systemic racism. Another guy that I follow, a podcast, Scott Adams, by the way, that those of you that care, he took this on a couple months back, and I thought it was, he took it on Twitter and said, you tell me right now what's systemic racism in the U.S. Very, very difficult, because systemic, right, is built in. It's into the system, right? It's not, it's not people that are doing it off the top of their head. So anyways, that should wrap up a Saturday. I'll see you Monday, and thanks for listening. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it. Cheers.